I love Video Game Dunkey. In case you're unaware, Dunkey is a YouTuber that produces a wide range of videos including reviews, essays, and commentary, mostly about video games, hence his title. He consistently puts out high quality stuff and he's never afraid to voice his opinion, even if it means trashing games that people love or praising games that people hate. Seriously, he's shit on so many beloved games, and yet his most disliked video of all time is his 4 out of 5 review of The Last of Us 2. Like, come on, really? What's up with that? I mean, I can make an educated guess about what's up with that, but anyway, while I don't always agree with his points, I truly respect his honesty and consistency, and he really is one of the best there is on this whole platform.
But he only gave Yooka-Laylee 2 points instead of 3, so his opinions are worthless!
Aw, Yooka-Laylee, the little game that could. Yooka-Laylee is a crowd-funded 3D platformer that was developed by Playtonic Games and released in 2017. The team behind the game was comprised of mostly former staffers of Rare, the studio behind the incredible and timeless Banjo-Kazooie, and their new project was able to raise over 2.5 million American dollars, thanks to its status as a spiritual successor to the Banjo series. Yada yada yada, skipping forward a bit, Yooka-Laylee ended up releasing 2 wildly mixed reviews, and now lives on as a footnote in gaming history, often cited as an example of the dangers of crowd-funded games as a whole. But that was then, and this is now, and with all the hype and controversy way past evaporated at this point, is it really that bad of a game? Well, the short answer is no, and the long answer is no, but good god, it's riddled with so many problems. I recently picked it up on the Switch for 10 bucks on sale from its usual $40 price tag, and actually managed to enjoy playing it for the most part, but I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on the game as a whole because I don't think I've ever felt this wildly conflicted about a game before. And because Dunkey's mostly negative 2 out of 5 review was what spiked my curiosity enough to buy it in the first place, I want to use his thoughts in order to frame my own. He has a lot of solid complaints about the game, but I disagree with quite a few of his points as well. Without further ado, let's begin.
Yooka-Laylee is uninspired and wildly uneven.
See, this is my biggest disagreement with Dunkey's review, and it sparked me to make this entire video in the first place. Yooka-Laylee is wildly uneven. Good god, is it ever wildly uneven, but I don't think it's fair to call it uninspired. This game is filled to the brim with neat and interesting ideas, but they all end up just kind of floundering and bringing down the overall experience. The massive hub world that functions as its own level is a neat concept that just doesn't work for reasons I'll discuss later. The character transformations, unnecessary and pace-breaking as they are all at the very least bizarre and creative concepts. The levels are clearly trying their best to be interesting and stuffed with all sorts of tasks, but they're just too goddamn big and it ends up becoming a chore to make your way around any of them. And the gimmick of expanding levels to make them even larger would have worked a lot better if the levels weren't already so large and devoid of activities in the first place. If anything, this game isn't uninspired, it's too inspired for its own good. I admire the ambition here, and I do believe that Playtonic was trying to create a great modern-day Banjo game with new ideas to call its own, but they ended up prioritizing quantity over quality in pretty much every way. As inspired as the quantity may be though, there is just a whole lot of f***ing garbage here.
It hits you with the best level right off the bat, and then it just kind of fades out.
Tribal Stack Tropics is definitely the game's most polished and consistent level from a technical standpoint. However, I disagree with it being the best level. It's a pretty standard grassy, hilly area that also functions as a safe zone to get accustomed with the controls, but I gotta say, I am just not very enamored with this place. It's very dull, the missions within it are all quite simplistic, it features the absolute worst character transformation in the entire game, as well as one of the game's wonkier boss fights, and it just feels a little monotonous to work your way through. Actually, this is one part of the game that I definitely call uninspired. In my opinion, the hub world, casino, and spacey final level are all much more worthwhile, even if they are significantly less consistent as well. But I'd personally take higher highs and lower lows in favor of a level that feels as stunningly mediocre and throwaway as this first one does.
Inconsistency haunts every corner of this game. Sometimes the music is beautiful, other times it's just loud and bombastic and grating. Sometimes the game looks beautiful, sometimes it looks like dog shit.
This game absolutely does sometimes look like dog shit, with lots of frame hiccups on the Switch and some truly bare-bones textures and effects. However, I disagree with Dunkey on the music 100%. While yeah, a few songs in the game are indeed loud and bombastic, they fit with the characters and settings that they're paired with. For example, the antagonist of the game is a ruthless capitalist bee, and the tracks that represent him in his lair, booming and heavy as they can be, perfectly underline every facet of his personality. The music for level-specific challenges, mini-games, or just exploration as a whole always fits in my opinion, and while I probably wouldn't listen to much of it outside of the game, I wouldn't call a single song here even close to bad.
Sometimes the controls are razor tight, other times they're slippery and imprecise.
I think the problem here is that Yooka-Laylee controls really well when you're just running around and jumping. For anything other than the most basic of tasks though, yes, Jesus Christ, things become slippery very quickly. For example, the duo have a roll ability where Yuka curls up into a ball and Laylee rides him around, which gives you a ton of speed and allows you to make your way up steep inclines. It works most of the time, but a lot of the more elaborate platforms just feel like they weren't built to handle this simple mechanic, which led to me falling to my death on more than one occasion. And other moves are even worse, such as swimming. Swimming in this game is atrocious and slow and clunky, but to be fair, this is a 3D platformer, so no real surprise there. But then there's the mini-games, minecart sections, character transformations, and a couple other special abilities. Get these things away from me, oh my god! Overall, Donkey's right, controls can be razor tight, as long as you're doing the absolute bare minimum in terms of exploring and platforming. In my personal opinion though, if the developers just couldn't get these mechanics to function within their physics engine, they should have thrown them out. But I guess that's asking for too much, right?
There are just blatant levels of polish not applied here, and in a lot of ways the game is less technically sound than Banjo-Kazooie, which came out 19 years ago.
I have nothing to say about this, except that he's absolutely right. Whether that's a testament to Banjo-Kazooie or a condemnation of Yooka-Laylee from a foundational level, is up for you to decide.
There are highlights though, like the character design. Yuka and Laylee are great stand-ins, and then you have Trowzer, he's just genius. That little satisfying jingle that plays when you earn a Pagey. The vibrant, colorful settings.
Yeah, all of the character designs and charming little flourishes are really great and do elevate the overall experience. I'm a sucker for the sound effects, humor, and personality that's oozing out of every nook and cranny of the game. Like, I love the fact that one of the standard enemies is a pair of googly eyes that takes over the body of any nearby object, and some of the jokes can get surprisingly PG-13 for what is ostensibly a family game. It's all great and really never got old to me though. For as charming as they are, these characters talk way too much sometimes, and I wish things were just a little bit more concise overall.
The rest, though, is just half-hearted, buggy filler and missed opportunities. Rextro 64ers, this dinosaur with these little arcade cabinets you play to earn pages. On paper, sounds like a lot of fun. But in practice, these little mini-games are complete dick.
There are 8 mini-games in the game, and in my opinion, only one of them, which is kind of a Flappy Bird ripoff in the final level, is even remotely redeemable. The rest either control like ass, take way too long to complete, or are just buggy as all hell, and the minigame in the swamp level is a combination of all 3. Worst of all, each minigame has 2 pages attached to it, one for beating it and one for beating Rextro's high score. I mean, sure, you can just ignore these frustrating little distractions, but they're truly bad in a way that the rest of the game isn't, and I don't think it's fair to give them a pass when they provide 16 out of the game's 145 total pages. Also, maybe this only bothers me, but why in the hell don't the minigames have retro graphics? The dinosaur's name is Rextro 64. The game already has a Nintendo 64 themed filter, for God's sakes. They couldn't have tried to make them look a little bit more primitive instead of just lazily reusing assets? I'm sure it was a budgetary decision, but my god, it makes the entire experience feel that much more throwaway, and that little bit of extra detail would have gone a long way in making these feel just a little bit more tolerable. This is one of my biggest disappointments out of the whole game actually, because they really could have been good, and I'm big into these little pace breakers in concept, but they're just so poorly designed and absolutely worthless at the end of the day. Oh well, at least Rextro himself is adorable. I love his entire character and personality to death. Not enough to redeem his awful minigames, but almost enough.
You have this shitty golfing part that makes me want to blow my head off.
I actually kind of like the golfing parts, though to be fair, the physics of the golf ball aren't exactly great. But there are only 2 of these sections in the whole game as far as I know, and they didn't really give me much trouble.
You have these wonky minecart sections.
The minecart sections are absolute hell. The only thing in the game is consistently dreadful as the minigames. And then there's a boss in the 4th level that takes place entirely on a minecart track, and you're stuck with these asinine controls trying to maneuver through an overly long and frustrating battle section. Yeah, these can go jump off a cliff. I truly despise everything about these sections, and unlike the adorable Rextro, the minecart himself is this bizarre Nigel Thornberry freak who I hate to even look at. Yeah, these are awful. The only thing that makes them slightly more redeemable than the minigames is that you only have to do each of them once, and the first 2 are fairly easy to complete.
You have this dickhead hub world where you can't even find the next level. Seriously, who made this thing?
Okay, I'm gonna come out in defense of the hub world for a bit because it's one of the game's qualities that I do honestly respect. As a quick refresher for those who aren't fluent in old 3D platformers, these games would often have hub worlds, which were small areas that connected all of the levels and usually contained collectibles of their own. Peach's Castle in Super Mario 64 is the most prominent example, but then there's Mario Sunshine's Isle Delfino, Battle for Bikini Bottom's Bikini Bottom, and of course Banjo-Kazooie's Gruntilda's Lair. These hubs are always dense, self-contained, and memorable, but they're usually just large enough to give the player space to get used to the controls and uncover a few hidden secrets. They have to be this way because they connect the rest of the game together, and a game developer ideally doesn't want players to get lost just trying to navigate from level 1 to level 2. Yooka-Laylee throws all of that out of the window in favor of a massive sprawling hub world that essentially functions as its own level. It features 20 pages compared to every other level's 25, and eventually you can even find secret shortcuts to get around faster. This is an incredible idea, it's honestly quite innovative and is a good example of game developers with a limited budget making the most out of their assets. But this hub suffers from a fundamental flaw. This area, like many others in the game, is just too big for its own good. It's not impossible to get around, but my god can it be tedious. It limits and even discourages backtracking by stretching levels so far apart, and due to its size, it becomes difficult to memorize where exactly things are. It sucks because I really do like the idea of a hub world serving as its own level, and I appreciate how varied the scenery becomes as you progress deeper in it. But it falls flat on its face by, again, just being way too much of itself and not understanding that sometimes less really is more. But despite all of that, I'm still glad it exists because it's a creative idea that I do believe can be tweaked upon and improved in future games. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but... Okay, that's definitely wishful thinking, honestly, who am I kidding?
Why do the enemies take so many hits to kill? Why do I have this annoying meter for my special abilities? Why is it so hard to fly around? Why does this casino level even exist?
I'm gonna tackle all of these at once. Yeah, some of the Mook enemies take way more hits than they really should before finally being murdered by you. Yeah, the special ability meter is very annoying. At first I didn't think it'd be that bad since I don't mind stamina meters if they're implemented well, but considering how many time challenges there are in this game and how massive the levels are, it wears itself out very quickly and ends up feeling tacked on in order to artificially create challenge. I actually think the flying works fine enough, except for when the camera totally out and gets stuck on a wall or something, and honestly, I don't hate the casino level like some others do. It suffers the same issues as every other area. Yeah, it's certainly way too big for what it is, but at the same time, I appreciate it for being more unique than the previous grass, snow, swamp levels, and I can at the very least tolerate it. But I want to use this section to touch on something that Dunkey didn't mention himself, the bosses, because they're a perfect distillation of my problems with the overall game. They're all really creative and utilize platforming, special moves, or transformations to some degree, but my god, they're just so buggy and clunky and feel like they're more than they need to be. They suffer from issues with hit detection, weren't designed with the game's finicky camera in mind, go on for way longer than they need to, and oh my god, the minecart boss! And the final battle with Capital B. Oh, don't even get me started on the final battle with Capital B. I actually ended up not finishing the game because of the fight with this stupid asshole. I can handle some tedium in my video games, but if I'm being asked to do tedious tasks, and I'm not even having fun, and the controls don't work, and it takes forever to finish, yeah, at that point, it's just not worth it. The final boss in Yooka-Laylee is one of the worst and most frustrating bosses I've ever fought in a 3D platformer. I honestly felt good when I decided to say f it and give up. But again, the bosses as a whole are all creative, way more than 3D Mario's usual 3-phase design at the very least, so it's a real shame that they blow as much as they do. And that's why I believe that they represent the game as a whole. Just like everything else, they all possess good or at least interesting ideas conceptually that end up totally failing in execution in every major way. And they're just too much.
Why don't the characters interact and feel like they're a part of the level? Instead, they're just kind of glued onto the floor.
This is something that I did notice while playing the game, but it didn't really bother me personally. There is a certain sense of hollowness in the lack of character movement, but I'm willing to forgive this sort of thing given the fact that it doesn't affect gameplay and the team was working with a limited budget. And regardless, the character designs are all wacky and likable enough to more than make up for it. Yeah, even the freaky fridge lady, I actually grew to like her by the end of the game too. Is there something wrong with me?
Why do they have these crappy black doors everywhere that disrupt the flow of the entire game?
Do I go this way or do I go this way? This is where you're supposed to go. No, wait, this is wrong. Did they really need that for every single...
The black doors, in my opinion, aren't really disruptive, they're just kind of odd and half-baked in execution. Basically, Yooka-Laylee is riddled with black doors that lead to new sub-areas, and these doors also serve as the game's only form of checkpoints. While I don't mind their existence, given how large and spiraling these levels are, I am utterly baffled that they provide the only way to save your progress mid-level considering how easy it is to fall and die. There's just not enough of them, and they're often located on the edges of the map, adding just another tedious and frustrating mechanic in the form of lots of wasted time backtracking after death. But again, I didn't feel that they broke the pace of the game. If anything, I sort of wish there were more of them, or, I don't know, actual goddamn checkpoints maybe?
Where's the pause theme, man, huh? How you not gonna have pause music?
The Switch version of the game does have pause music, actually. So there you go.
Why do they just keep recycling the same characters in every level without introducing ones that actually fit the level theme?
This is another thing I can overlook given the game being kickstarted and all, though I will say that there actually are a few level-specific NPCs, such as Shovel Knight for some godforsaken reason, these shopping carts in the swamp level, and my absolute favorite joke in the entire game, a poorly disguised capital B running a booth in the casino, which I'm choosing to count as a level-specific NPC even though he's the main antagonist because I can. This is my opinion, even if it's technically wrong, it's my opinion.
Yooka-Laylee is too afraid to embrace the confident simplicity of Banjo-Kazooie, and it isn't inventive enough to be mistaken for Banjo-Tooie. It ends up feeling like a fan tribute rather than something a team of professionals worked on, and I'm very disappointed with this game.
So that ends Dunkey's review, which means I'll wrap up my thoughts as well. Yooka-Laylee was obviously crafted by a loving and passionate team who were trying their best to make a good game. However, you just can't make a video game with this many varied and grandiose ideas on such a relatively shoestring budget and expect the overall package to be anything other than an inconsistent and buggy mess. But do you want to know a major reason why Yooka-Laylee turned out the way it did? Do you want to know why it was doomed before it even launched? Stretch goals. The game's stretch goals, in my opinion, were obstacles that were self-imposed by the directors and ended up harming the final product in major ways. As a quick summation, usually when projects are kickstarted beyond their initial goal, those in charge add stretch goals, which are additional perks that are added onto the main campaign. For example, some of the game's first stretch goals were promises for boss fights in each level, character transformations, and even the stupid goddamn fucking minecart sections, oh my god. These ideas were all guaranteed to make it in the game, if and only if the Kickstarter was successful enough to fund them. And do you want to know what happened next? The Kickstarter was successful enough to fund them, and the developers were stuck with the task of realizing these concepts, even if they didn't work, and even if they weren't fun. And do you want to know what happened next? What happened next was f***ing Yooka-Laylee! An admirable but overly ambitious game that promised too much and failed to deliver on said promises. Yooka-Laylee, a B-tier 3D platformer that oozes with charm, nostalgia, and interesting concepts, bogged down by a tight budget and unrealistic expectations. Yooka-Laylee, a broken mess of a game that I still had way more fun with than I thought I would. Yeah, despite everything, I liked my time with Yooka-Laylee. I enjoyed the platforming challenges, the levels were so stupidly large that when I finally stumbled into a new activity after running around aimlessly, I always felt satisfied. I appreciated the scope of things. I even kind of liked all the dumb Superman 64 ring challenges. It was a blast at some points, and I'm glad I finally played it after all these years. But it's just too much, too big, and too empty, and its developers failed to utilize the resources at their disposal in effective ways, adding in more and more while failing to refine the decently good skeleton of a game that they built for themselves. Look, if you're into this sort of thing, I still recommend it. Not for 40 bucks? No, good god, no, not for 40 bucks. But if you can grab it on sale for less than 15 or so, I say go for it. But Yooka-Laylee will always live on as a massive pile of missed potential for me, unfortunately. A solid 3 out of 5 product, if you will. And in summation, I am very disappointed with this game.
But I hate to end this video on such a down note.
Not me. Bye bye.